Hey, we're here for some sort of debrief. It is not the debrief, but it's me and Jer chopping whatever the hell that was at the back end of the window into pieces and trying to formulate some sort of conclusion of which we can go away today and maybe feel, or I can go away and maybe feel just a little bit better. But first is first. Mr. Jer Lynch, how are you doing, sir?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. We're getting over the fallout of the last couple of days, and I suppose trying to cut through the emotion of it and realize that the whole window probably wasn't as damp a squib as we probably it is. That the first half of it was very good. We got some very good players in. We just fell short at that key moment towards the back end, and I think that's going to be raw for a little bit longer, at least until we get them back playing football. So we've got 2 weeks to fester in our own disappointment after on the back end of not finishing it off. But outside of that, I'm grand, cup of coffee in front of me and ready to go.
Good man, good man. Yeah, you guys get your questions in the comment section below as well, and we'll try and get through a few as well towards the end. But you guys want your 10 a.m.s, Jer. I've got, as you know, mate, I've got an audience at 10 a.m. And I was thinking to myself, what on earth can I talk about this morning? And we were speaking about last week doing something, and obviously on the Wednesday. And I thought, I'm just gonna have to fill this out and just talk to Jer at maybe 10 a.m. I gave Jer about 80 options on what he wants to do today, and he picked the 10 a.m., which I was more than happy with. So, yeah. It's dissecting it, isn't it, Jer? I know you've done it. I've sort of tried to do it yesterday to death. You try remain balanced, but it's bizarre. I still feel really hurt by it, mate. And I'm interested to just get the general, synopsis of how you're feeling as a Leeds United fan right now.
It kind of just feels like the more things change, the more they stay the same. Like, are we ever going to get a final end to a transfer window where it goes the way Leeds fans wanted to go? And I know there's probably an element of us, throwing our ties out of pram because we didn't get the shiny tie at the very end that we all wanted. But I think a lot of the disappointment is based off, I feel like, based off logical disappointment because people have listened to what has been said. People are basing all of their opinions on what's been put out there from not only Daniel Farke and what he wanted at the end of the window, but what the ownership promised over the course of the window, spending every penny, being aggressive, being ambitious. And you kind of look at the side that they put together, and there's some very good players in there. And I know people are giving our goalkeeper a bit of stick at the moment, but I think Lucas Perry is going to be a very good goalkeeper for us, giving him time to settle in. I really like Anton Stack. I think Gabby Gudmundsson's really, really good and looks really comfortable coming in from France. He'll have tough games. Like Mo Salah destroyed him in the Champions League last year. So he has that to look forward to at some point. Hopefully he'll miss him with the AFCON. But I think they've still put a decent side together. But I just think what we were all hoping for was a window where finally we came out of a window not going, but we didn't get everything we needed. There's still gaps in the squad. We wanted the full rounded picture. And we talked about it last night on my podcast, and I said to Paul and Jerry, if you look at the window over the last 2 years in the Premier League, clubs like Aston Villa, Newcastle, Chelsea, at certain points have sold players who were first team players in order to rebalance the squad in areas that it needed to be rebalanced. Now, I use Joe Pirro as an example, and that's all it is. It's just a hypothetical name to throw out there. But you look at positions where Leeds are overstacked, and you've got Mecha, DCL, Pirro, Harry Gray, probably Noah Okafor as well, who has played as a striker for AC Milan, could play there as well. Do you sacrifice the sellable asset there in order to bring the money in that you need to fix the balance on the right-hand side to bring in the player that you need there? And I think that Leeds have kind of not only struggled to get the shinier tie at the very end of it and the one that will make the difference, a difference maker, as they kept saying over the summer, we're looking for a difference maker, but you failed to bring anybody in and you failed to get bodies out as well. So ultimately, there's a financial issue there that pops up of, well, we didn't bring in the money that we thought. Darko JB's gone for a free transfer on deadline day. Illan Meslier is still at the club, and you're likely thinking that that's going to be a contract cancellation at some point to get the wages off the book.
Don't you dare miss Grove's heat map.
Listen, I like Ilya Groves. I'm not going to give him any stick. That was a hell of a heat map, but I'm not going to. But do you know what? And I also feel sorry for the social media team because I worked in social media for a very long time, and so you've worked in journalism, so you know this as well. A lot of that stuff would have been scheduled days, weeks ago to go out on certain moments. Like, they're not even there posting that. They're not even there at all. Probably these posts have all been scheduled, and they get the brunt of it, like absolute brunt of it. But I think it shouldn't be missed, Conor, that I think the ownership have stuck their head in the sand. And I hate to make comparisons because they are a far better ownership than we've had before. And I think what you've said before about it, about backing the ownership and thinking we've got a proper company behind us that are driving it the right way. I was the same. I've given them an awful lot of rope, I suppose, over the course of the summer, a bit of slack, and at some point that rope was going to end up around somebody's neck come the end of it if the window didn't finish the way it was supposed to. But I do kind of look at it and go, well, if you hadn't put so much out there in the media, this probably wouldn't be as big of an issue. You appear to put your head in the sand and are hoping that this will go away in 2 weeks' time if you don't talk about it. And then I had a bit of a swing at them yesterday about Darko JB not even getting a social media post to say thanks for everything and all the best on your future endeavors. Somebody pointed out to me, well, they put it on the website. I was like, yeah, they put it on the platform with no comment section. So there was a decision made there as well. But Gruev's heat map goes there. Dan James' international duty goes out on social media, but Darko JB's goodbye ends up on the website and not on social media where people can interact with it. And there's been an issue around ownership interaction with the fan base for quite some time. We know from our perspective, they don't deal with us, they won't deal with us. But then you've got the wider piece of that going, well, that's the opportunity for the fans to go in and say, all the best, Darko, wish you nothing but success, blah, blah, blah. And that's not happened there as well. And all of that in the same day just leaves a very bad taste in your mouth. And all you want at that point is someone to come out and say, mea culpa, hand up. Look, we were aggressive, we were ambitious, probably too ambitious, and we didn't get what we needed to get done because of that. But we tried, we'll go again in January. You're hoping for that. But it's just been silence. And we're now Wednesday and nothing has been said about it. And again, going back to the older ownerships, even at their absolute worst, we got it. Don't go to bed just yet. We got Bates coming out calling us all names, but also at the same time acknowledging what was happening. GFH coming out and saying we missed out on targets. There was always something afterwards. And because there's now just a vacuum of silence, that's going to be filled with all of our opinions and everyone else venting about what's happened in the last couple of days. And it does take away from what was probably 60% of a very good window. You were just waiting on that last little bit to push it right over the line and be an 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 transfer window. And then it kind of just falls back to being a 5 out of 10 because half the pitch is done. I'm happy with half of what you've done. But that final half, you're now living on ifs. You're hoping that if Mecha and if DCL can stay fit, that would be okay there. If Dan James can find his form, if Noah Okafor comes in and hits the ground running and we can start creating chances, we might be okay. But you're living off of an if because of that.
It feels very much like Leeds are kind of at a stage now, Joe, where I don't really know what the solution is. You've gone in, you've gone into such a fight, such a duel of which we're up against it anyway. We're up against, absolute juggernauts, Goliaths in the space of which it's been a Super League, hasn't it, for the past 2 years, and they've grown, they've developed, they've got stronger, obviously monetary value wise and just as clubs. And we're kind of going into it right now. And we're already up against it. You bring in 2 more players and you're already up against it. Even if you bring in Igor Pajau, you bring in Rodrigo Muniz, you give yourself an unbelievable chance, of course. But they've got to stay fit. They've got to perform. They've got to hit the ground running. There's a lot of variables there. And suddenly now you're looking at it. And for the past 3 games, as me and you've spoken about multiple times, there's been no open play goals. Yes, the context is we've played very tough games, of course, the first 3. But I guess, Jer, it's in that final third of the pitch. A, Leeds haven't looked threatening, but B, how could they let it get to this point? Because it was abundantly clear even after Everton, wasn't it, that Leeds are just in that final thing. It's not even about the quality of team, Joe, we're playing, is it? It's about you get beyond that midfield space in between their midfield and their defence. And we don't really know what to do with it. The decision making feels a little bit fraught, and I guess they're the 2-pronged problems, aren't they? We've not sorted it.
No, I think some of it will fix itself. I don't think it's all, doom and gloom, because I think if you look at the Newcastle game specifically, and very much so in the first half, we got very close to getting into their penalty area on numerous occasions, only for a slightly under hit pass or a slightly over hit pass or a pass that went behind a runner instead of in front of a runner. Like, they're small, minute details that will improve the more games they play and the more the match sharpness picks up. So you'll start to see those stuff come true. I mean, Anton Stack, I think, has the 3rd most created chances in the league so far this season, which says an awful lot for a player you brought in to be your number 6. So, but he's had to be playing more advanced because of the injuries to Ampadu and Tanaka. So that's given him a license to go forward. But they are getting into positions where they can create chances. but it's just been that final ball is letting them down. That could be the quality aspect. I think maybe if you've got a Pajot, maybe if you've got a Brownhill, someone like that in the final third who can find a little pass, then maybe that gets that fixes that problem. But I don't think it'll be as big of an issue as we think it will be. But I think you've made it a little bit harder for yourself when you could have made it easier. I think the way I described it last night was it's probably not a failure to deliver, but it's probably very much a missed opportunity where you were that close to completing the puzzle and giving yourself every single opportunity, and you've just fallen over at the final hurdle when that was when you needed to push. And even if it had been Harry Wilson that came in, like I kind of said, he's not a difference maker. They talked about his set piece ability. It was like, yeah, but his G&A doesn't back that up. And unfortunately, I'm not a G&A merchant. I like to look at other aspects of the game. But in that specific player that you're looking to bring in and create chances from set plays and from corner kicks, then G&A does become important because that's what you're looking at. Like, do they convert corners? Do they get assists? Do they score goals from free kicks? I think 1 assist last year, five goals. 6 in a year from a set piece specialist probably isn't exactly what you're looking for. You're probably looking for closer to 10 or 11. And he's done that in the past, but it just wasn't what you were hoping for at the very end. And then the if or the but that's hanging over that is, well, what happens if he gets injured? You're right back where you started because you're only bringing in 1. So at that point, I was thinking, we still need 2. We still need a Hamer. We still need a Brownhill. We still need somebody else that's available that you can go and grab. You still need 2. And then the window closes and you get none of them. And then that's where I think the absolute meltdown happens because the manager very clearly said, and he said it since AC Milan, we need 2. We need 2 up top. And then you go back to Prague's comments before the Everton game, which is probably ill-advised to continue to put yourself on camera, saying that most of the business gets done the last week or so of the window. And in the last 2 weeks of the window, you brought in a backup fullback and nobody else. And I think that's where, and I think people are right to be allowed to be annoyed at that because you're only basing your response on what has been promised and what has been said. So our response is directly to him saying we'll be busy in the last couple of days of the window, and we weren't. And the manager saying he needed 2 and he didn't get them. And then no goals from open play. And all of that comes together to say, well, this is going to, the fact that Daniel Farke even said, if we don't get them, it'll be a difficult season. And you're like, well, now it's going to be a difficult season.
Mm. Yeah, it's really. I'm really struggling to. I mean, like you've quite rightly said, mate. I mean, we got on this morning, fielded a couple of chats from people on the Patreon, and it's almost like the video title and theme is the way forward, and that's the way we've got to move forward, obviously. But there's naturally just this looming thing right now of just maybe a lack of quality, of lack of match winners, and it was there to be done, wasn't it, Jer? It felt like in that attacking third, however they try frame this, and there will be a framing, there always is. However they frame this, you've got a guy 40 minutes up the road if they wanted to do that. We're talking about Harry Wilson there. If he was a one of the targets on the shortlist, you presume he was on a shortlist. That could have been done a little bit earlier. It felt like it was just a little bit slow, a little bit unorganized, I would say as well. I'd go as strongly as saying that, which I don't enjoy saying with the Leeds United recruitment team. But I don't know what the priority was, and it maybe felt like they stuck on certain targets too long. And now we're kind of talking about scrambling round for Christian Eriksen and Hakeem Ziyech, mate. And obviously, I can't see either of those being done. But it almost, you feel cheated, don't you, Joe? You're looking at it now, and you're like, but it's not over. This isn't over. There's something else that is happening. I don't believe that this is over. They can't leave us like this. That's how it feels at the minute, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think if you're to be fair, you look at the last 2 summer windows, and they did pull a rabbit out of a hat before the end of both of them, but they were in the championship, and you were
Solomon,
but you were the big dog fishing in the championship transfer pond. So then you go into the Premier League, and I think maybe they decided to try and apply their NFL contract model to this, where basically it's, we'll dictate the contracts, we'll dictate the prices here. We're not going to be held to ransom, which in one sense you're really happy about because for far too long, Leeds have always overpaid for players and it's never really worked in our favor. So part of you is like, yeah, fine, do that. But then you get to the final week at the window and all of a sudden you don't have the power in this anymore. The selling clubs do, because you're on the clock. And they know you need people. And you've said you need people. It's out there. It's public information. So you don't have the hand anymore to be the one to dictate stuff. And there is a point where You get to the end of it where you're like, you're going to have to find money from somewhere. And you've got till next June to balance PSR. Like you could sell in January. So if it is a case of, well, we're on the PSR limit right now, we can't spend any more. Well, no, you can't. You can. And then you can sell in January and try and bring some of that money back.
That's going to be it. I think we're aware of that, aren't we? I think the narrative is very much now going to be, well, we said we were going to spend X amount and we got to that amount, and that's the level of which we could do. But I don't think it's going to fly, is it? It's really not going to fly.
I don't think so either. And I kind of went through it last night. Now, again, I was pulling numbers off of Transfermarkt, and if I went through it, because everyone's saying Leeds spent 101 million, but if I go through the euro prices, which is what Leeds have conducted their business in euros, not pounds, because they bought players from the continent. If you go through it, Leeds have spent 99.4 million pounds if you convert it back into pounds from euros. Total spend 99.4 million. They've brought in 7.8 million pound in incomings, which is a failure of its own to not be able to get players off the books for money. Maybe you should have accepted something for them just to at least get some cash in. Which means the net spend for Leeds is about 91 million. Now, some are saying the net spend is 101.5. But even if it is 101.5, maybe just 10 million of a difference there. From what I could see at the start of the season, Leeds' PSR headroom was 105 million pounds. Leeds then had a new share option that went out to the existing shareholders, which brought in 120 million. Half of that was to go on the stadium redevelopment. Half of that was to go in. So that's an additional 60 million on top of that 105. So even at conservative estimations, you're looking at about 150 million. The fact that they were still willing to try and buy a player on deadline, they suggest there was still some money left over there, whether it was 10 million or 15 million. But again, the point is this. If you go and bring in a target, like say it's a Harry Wilson, or say it's not, say you do go and spend 20 million quid and bring somebody else in on the right-hand side, you're probably 10 million over your PSR allowance. Come January, you then look at your squad and go, who's not playing, who's not getting enough minutes, because it's a big squad and it's a competitive squad. Is there offers on the table for these? Can we get them off the books? Can we get the option for Isaac Schmidt brought in early? Can we get that done in January? They've done that before as well. And the club did say early on the window, we don't need to balance the books until June. So there was time there if they needed to find extra cash. And again, you've got a juggernaut like Red Bull sitting there with 10% investment. There's things that can be done to bring extra cash in. And let's not kid ourselves on this. Plenty of other clubs play with PSR and have gotten around it. I know Sunderland had more headroom when it came to wages and stuff like that, but they spent 185 million pounds. They didn't have that much headroom. They didn't have 80 million pounds worth more of a headroom in 1 year, considering that the PSR is going to be over a 3-year period and not one. So what, 65 million pound in losses over each year for 3 years. So there is and was ways they could have done this. And again, as I say, you've got Gus Hamer down the road. And then for the club to list, I mean, I read this out last night and I'll do it again for you just for effect more than anything else. Diarra, Siddiqui, Paige, Munez, Krstovic, Buenanotte, Bakwe, Spurtian, Demirovic, Gonzalez, Buendia, Hamer, El Canous. We didn't speak to any of them according to the information that came out from the club. Question is then, who the hell were you speaking to?
It's also rubbish because we know it's rubbish.
All of them make you better. Yeah, which suggests to me that you spoke to all of them and just haven't been able to get it done. You could have got Bakwe for 22 million pounds in the end. That could have been done. Hamer's down the road. Go for a loan. Give them a big chunk of money next year when you've got a year behind you in the Premier League. And the question that a lot of people will say is, well, Hamer's not good enough. Some people want him. Some people don't want him. But the quick way I'd frame this is, at this point of a window, is he better than what we've got? And does he add to the squad? We have a 6'5" man taking corners. Hamer takes that away. We have nobody who can take a free kick. Just all of this. We're just going to stand over and, Harrison. 2 years on, we got Jack Harrison and Brendan Aronson standing over a ball again in 2025 with their hands over their mouth and the ball goes into the wall or over the wall. So that brings you forward. You bring in a Hamer and that fixes that. So I think that they've maybe tried to look at these long-term options. They've got to bring a player in now for the long term, but I think there were some short-term ones there they probably should have looked at to make sure that they still have a long-term should the season not go the way they planned.
Bobby said, "I'm not sure how true this is, Bobby. I've not been able to look through it this morning. But Barron's saying that the club struggled to get a winger out there because they felt there were few out there better than James and Nonto. Insane. Yeah, as I say, mate, I've not read it through thoroughly this morning, Bobby. But if I was to take your word for it, if that is true, which we have heard before when it comes to the club framing a narrative, that is absolute nonsense. It is nonsense. There was different profiles out there of which could have come in and give Leeds something completely varied. We're all aware of that. We all know who we were linked to and the achievable nature of those at stages of the window. And the outgoings, Jer, is something that is so frustrating. It is so frustrating, especially when you look at maybe certain players of which may not acclimatise. I mean, what I will say is, I guess there is a slight overflow from the previous ownership in terms of these contract lengths, which it's probably a good idea to touch on.
Yeah, there's lots of fingers to be pointed. It shouldn't just be pointed at the current ownership. A lot of it needs to be pointed back at the massive credit card bill that Victor Orta left behind him when he left the club, because that's still being paid off. You know, we are still paying off deals for players that aren't here anymore and haven't been here for a while. We are still paying off transfer fees for them. And bearing in mind that those deals that were done were so bad that we ended up taking a huge loss on them in the end just to get the wages off the books. I mean, Diego Llorente goes for 2 loans. We've got an 18 million option the first year he goes out on loan. Roma said, you know what, don't fancy that. You can have him back. Betis take him and they put a 10 million pound option to buy in him. And then come the end of that loan, having played for them, they said, we like him. We want to keep him. We're not giving you 10 million quid. You can have 4. And he goes for 4. And then Mark Roque goes there as well. Same thing. Loan with an option, 8 million. Not giving you 8 million. We'll give you 2. You get 2 million pound. Both those players cost, what, 28 million combined?
Right, yeah.
And you brought in 10, maybe less than that for 2 of them. And then again, that's because the wages were so high and they have to get those wages off the book. So a decision has to be made. So there's culpability from the previous ownership. We are living under that shadow still and will be for probably another year or 2 before that all those contracts tend to go away. And Harrison and Aronson are in that bracket as well. They're on contracts that were signed towards the end of it. And nothing you can do about that. Does anybody value Brendan Aronson at 25 million? Probably not. Does anybody want Jack Harrison? Rumors would suggest that there was no interest in him at all this summer. So you've got these 2 players that you're stuck with. So Daniel Farke then has to go, well, the fans don't want them, but I have to reintegrate them because we don't have anybody else and I can't sell them. So need to do something here. So he's hamstrung with players that he has rather than necessarily players that he wants to bring in. So there's culpability. There's lots of fingers that can be pointed and lots of directions. But again, just takes the current ownership to come out and sit down and go, this is the story, lads. This is what happened. This is where we are. Whether you like it or not,
will that satisfy you? Coming out and telling us where we are and this story and
I think I'd be angry for a minute and I'd get over it then. Rather than sitting going, what's the story, lads? Like, why is no one saying anything? Why are we 3 days in? Like, nothing. Not even a tweet to say that's our business done, folks. Nothing. Just complete and utter radio silence.
Imagine if they put that out.
Well, they essentially did don't go to bed just yet because it was Leeds are in for Harry Wilson. Leeds have confirmed they're in for Harry Wilson. Yeah. Leeds have stole Darko JB good night. And you're like, what?
For nothing.
That's it. We're doing that again, are we? We're chasing players going into the deadline and we end up selling somebody instead of actually bringing anybody in. I mean, really? And then you're like, okay, we'll get a tweet, we'll get a message, we'll get something, and then nothing. And I've worked in big American companies, and I know the marketing language that can be used an awful lot in those companies. And sometimes there is a decision that is made to say nothing. And that this will go away with the news cycle. This will go away in time. That the mood will settle. People will make decisions and this will all go away. And I think they've possibly looked at it. And either there's 2 things going on. One, there's a massive post-mortem happening before they do come out and say something. So they're going through that. And it's probably a bit of a PR exercise happening. How to manage the fallout of this. How do we word this correctly to minimize the fan backlash? Or the second side of it is simply, we've got 2 weeks of an international break. No press conferences are needed until at least next Wednesday. Keep our mouth shut, say nothing. By the time Daniel comes back on Wednesday, he'll be the one. Now, Farke should not be the spokesperson of this club. Daniel Farke should not be the man that's put out there in front of the cameras to explain what happened. It's not his fault. Whether you like Daniel Farke or you don't like Daniel Farke, whether you rate him as a manager or don't rate him as a manager, none of this is on him. None of this is on him. They have failed to do the jobs that they were going all Roy Keane again, but they failed to do the job they were employed to do. That was the job. Finish the job and get somebody in. And I mean, even if it's somebody subpar, I mean, again, going back to the worst case scenario, Leeds have a plane on the ground to sign Cody Gakpo. Overnight, Cody Gakpo gets a phone call from Van Gaal, says, go to Leeds, you're not getting in the national side. Changes his mind, doesn't go. Leeds fly the plane to Marseille to get Bamba Dieng. He's on the plane. Nice ring him. Here's more money. Gets off the plane. And they finish up with Willie Nanto. But at least they got that in the door at the very end. And we got somebody in. We've managed to finish off with planes for Buonanotte on the ground. Didn't get on it. Plane on the ground for Harry Wilson. Didn't get on it. Ended up with nobody. So, that's the stuff that's annoyed people. And the silence doesn't help. And whatever way they decided to do it, I genuinely think they're going to try and wait this out. But it needs to be a parag or an Adam Underwood or a Robbie Evans or somebody that needs to come out and sit down, whether it's an interview Square Ball, whether it's an interview with The Athletic, whether it's an interview with somebody, they need to come down and explain this to the fans, because it's not okay to just ignore the fans and go, tough.
I guess that's what it's going to be, isn't it? In New Orleans, in the States, there is obviously the Square Ball going over there with Parag, and you would presume that is maybe where they're going to do their piece to the fans, I would suggest.
Would you be surprised if that got cancelled?
No, I've said someone else said that to me as well. Yeah. With yeah.
No, I read Chris Mack's piece yesterday in the Square Ball, and to be fair, I think Chris Mack has been pretty fair. Chris can be very, but I genuinely think he's been relatively balanced and trying to weigh it all up properly. So I think it's a really good piece that he's written. But if you're the ownership of the club, I don't think you're going to like that at all.
Well, it's how it was.
Are you then going to sit down and talk to them?
Well, it's how it was. So if anybody doesn't know, they're meeting in New Orleans with the Leeds United Americas group, and there's the Square Ball, and obviously Parag out there in Stuart Dallas, and Chris put out this piece, didn't he? And it was just, I think it was how you saw it on social media, and it was effectively like, what's gone wrong, effectively, and what have they not done right? Obviously, I'm paraphrasing, but yeah.
Parag's face with a kind of a broken American flag across the front of it. A very pointed.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a fan of ever sticking nationalities on things. I don't see the point in that, because it's the fact that he's American's got nothing to do with the fact that they balls up the end of the window. Like that's irrelevant, So when you stick that on there, you're kind of making a statement of going, well, it's not just your fault, it's America's fault.
Because it's such a sort of a sensitive time at the minute. They give him very particular. They give them very particular questions that they can ask. Look, we've seen it with Conor before, haven't we? Where it's been quite loose, and we've seen it before with other people close to the club. But I feel now, at this moment, with how sensitive everything is, there might be a few guidelines there. This is what you can say. This is what you can't say, sort of thing.
I don't know if the Square Ball would agree to that, because Dan, to be fair to him, every year is excellent at talking to Conor. Like, he will push him on certain things. He will tell him when it's not okay. We saw the more sanitized version at the very end of the Radrizzani era, where Phil Hay wasn't allowed to do the interview on his own because of the questions that Phil. I miss Phil Hay's questions, by the way. I mean, talk about holding people to account. I miss
so
Phil.
Direct, wasn't he?
Yeah, but they had Ornstein beside him because the club were like, we're not letting Phil loose on his own. You're his boss. You can sit beside him, But I don't know if the Square Ball, given the current landscape, would look at a pre-approved list of questions and go, yeah, we're happy to answer it, because there's going to be ones that they're not going to want to answer, so they're not going to be on the list. And I don't know if they do that. I think it might be a case that the club say, but we'll do the interview, but it's not going out live, and we want to review it before we agree to let that go out. Because the one interview I did with the club with Scubala, there were parts of that interview that at the end of it, they said, you need to cut those bits out and send it to us for approval before we allow you to put it out, which I did. So there is that part there as well. So it'll be interesting. But I do think, and I'm a firm believer in, when you get it wrong, put your hand up, say you got it wrong, you'll get a bit of shit for a minute, and then you move on from it. But by not saying anything, that lingers there always in the background. And every time they make a mistake, this will be dug up. Every time the ownership, we're still looking at Cellino being chased around Elland Road. We're still hearing about Ross McCormack going on Sky Sports on deadline day and pretty much offering himself out to anybody who wanted him. We're still talking about GFH Capital checking Football Manager for transfers and ringing podcasters. All that stuff. Say your tweet from Radrizzani, like, all that stuff gets dug out every single time one of them made a mistake. And you're now in a situation where there's plenty of it out there now for the current ownership, that if they do make mistakes going forward, those compilation videos of Parag statements are going to be rolled out and used against them. So you're better to just come out and go, let's just deal with it. Let's just get it out there. We'll take the heat for a couple of weeks and then we'll move on.
A lot of people have been saying, and you'll have heard it, I think we spoke about it, to be fair, Farke will walk. Farke should walk. I struggle to get on board with that. I do think he has been backed way more than what he was backed at Norwich, 100%. I think obviously he got 100 points, which was kudos to him and everybody behind him. And obviously us having such a brilliant squad last season, of which we all thought should have won the league, but then he had to deliver it as well. Right now, How do you think he's feeling? Do you think he's feeling a little bit maybe of a lack of connection between himself and the board? Obviously, we can't confirm or deny that, but do you think obviously coming out and saying, look, we need a couple more players, and he has said it in all fairness to him for around about the last 3 weeks, do you think he's thinking to himself, I've been severely let down here?
I do. I do, because I think I'm trying to find the exact quote, but if you look at what was said when Daniel Farke was hired, when Parag did the interview with Matt Lewis on LUTV, he said that Daniel Farke wasn't given a full deck of cards with his 2 chances in the Premier League with Norwich, and that's something we at the 49ers will rectify when we get back to the Premier League. Now, we can say that the squad deals didn't look good.
Made a big thing of that, didn't they?
They did. And the reality is, no matter how good the window has been, and again, I'm not throwing the entire window out with the bat water here, the first half has been very, very good. The foundations were, I think the way we said it is, the foundations have been built, but they forgot to put the roof on. You know, that's where the house is at. But I think if you look at that specific quote and analyze it and go, has Daniel Farke got a full deck of cards? I think he's probably 3 or 4 short, really, realistically. And I think if you look at I think the fans leading into deadline day were being very fair. I think we all knew we probably needed an 8, a 10 who could play as a winger, and a 9. So we probably did need 3. Come deadline day, the fans' expectation had gone to, well, 2 would do it. A right winger who can play as a 10 and maybe a box-to-box goal scoring 8. That gives you something, or a 9, one or the other. And then come the last couple of hours, we'll take Harry Wilson. So the fan expectation had lowered over the course of a couple of weeks to a point where they would have accepted Harry Wilson coming in the door as, well, at least it's not nothing. But again, all of this and the sentiment and the reaction and all of it is just purely based on what was said. So, I mean, it's not like we're reacting to stuff we've made up ourselves. This is on the record stuff. And, you know, did they give Daniel Farke a full deck of cards? Probably not. Has he got most of the cards to keep Leeds in the league? Yeah, he probably does. And they have to be a bit creative now. Maybe they need to look at the 2 giant strikers they have and move towards more orthodox wingers, and that'll give them an option. Bring Willie Nanto back to the right-hand side of the park. Let him cross the ball in instead of cutting inside. You know, maybe Jack Harrison has to play on the left and whip balls in. Or maybe Okafor becomes a 10. You know, or maybe even Nanto becomes a 10. There's just things that they're going to have to try and look at now and go, well, we need to fill these gaps in another way. And Daniel Farke will have to do that. But I mean,
if Jack Harrison's starting on the left-hand side, I might have to really start focusing on that second channel.
But he works hard, and I mean, and I don't, and you know what, I do see merit in sometimes. Like I did see the merit in Aronson and Harrison coming on against Newcastle, because at that point in the game, you're not looking to create a chance. You're actually looking to try and just stop them from getting forward and defending that half of the park. And both of them will run around and get in their faces and be difficult and defend well. They do that, but
Joe,
again,
Joe, what about
fine for that?
What about this as well? And our good friend Steve's in the chat as well, going with the true Americanized comment as well, that improvise, overcome, adapt. Love that in there, Steve. Yeah. But Ross at Legion Eclipso said, I agree with that. I actually don't think the fallout would be as bad if we hadn't got rid of Ramazani. And I think from a PR perspective, that would have looked a lot better as well. And look, we know the manager isn't keen on Ramazani, evidently. However, you know, if you've got 2 players for each position and then you throw Harrison in there as well, you've got Ramazani, you've got Okafor on one side, you've got James and Nonso on the other side, and it kind of just balances things out a little bit, doesn't it? There's a little bit more certainty in what we have.
You should have Ramazani on the other side. He's a right footer. Put him on the right side, because what was the first thing you did for Valencia? Ran down the right wing and crossed with his right foot. Goal.
On a transition.
But we're persevering. This is the manager stuff. We're persevering with inverted wingers. So a right footer on the left-hand side, and we were looking for a left footer on the right side to come in. But you've now got 2 really big, tall strikers, and you've got a big, tall midfield. So maybe the best course of action is to get to the end line and cross the ball. And in that case, it's a more orthodox winger that would need to come in or change. Ramazani's the right-sided player. And I understand the reasons why Daniel Farke didn't play Ramazani. And it's purely a manager style and a manager approach. He wants somebody to do the defensive work as well, and Ramazani doesn't do that for him. And that's the depth of it. It's that deep that he doesn't trust him to do the hard defensive work. But then that comes to, well, if you want a creative spark, then there's a trade-off probably needed somewhere. You're not going to get the total package with every single player.
So I've said the last week, 100%.
So you need to make a trade-off there as well. I mean, I quite like the link-up play between Bogle and Willie Nanto on the right-hand side. Maybe that fixes the problem. And then Okafor comes in on the left. You've got options on the right between Nanto and Dan James. I'm still keen to see more of Aronson as a right winger, and again, a lot of that goes back to one particular game, and that was the first half against Crystal Palace in Selhurst Park the year we got relegated, where he was phenomenal on the right wing. He ran at people and cut inside and went for a goal, hit the post with an incredible run. And at that point, I went, "That's his position. He's not a 10. He's a right winger," and he never played there again. But I'm keen to see a bit more of that. But again, you're bringing down your expectation level a little bit and going, "Well, I want someone who's going to be a hard worker over there, rather than someone who's going to be a difference maker," which was labeled all summer. Ambitious, aggressive, difference maker. And we've probably finished off with, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but we've probably finished off with what I would call a very workmanlike team. They will all work hard, they will all battle, they will all fight. But there will be moments this season where you need that little bit extra. And at the moment, we don't have it. Maybe we get to January. They don't like doing business in January, but maybe we get to January and we're not in that bad a position and they can go and get 2.
What is like not bad, like not that bad of a position now? Is it just almost, obviously it's been out of the relegation zone, but even if you've got a chance by January, just a chance, you're 2 or 3 points in the relegation zone, it's a win. But we know wins are just like gems in the Premier League. It doesn't come around that often. Then they simply have to go and invest at that point, don't they? They have to go and invest if they've got a chance. But what this unfortunately has done, it is reduced our chances, in my opinion anyway, Joe, quite significantly.
I don't know if I'd say that, but I would say is it's made it more difficult and unnecessarily difficult. Like, again, missed opportunity. It was there to be finalized, finished off. Maybe don't wait till the last day to try and haggle. The last 15 minutes of a sale is probably not the best time to be haggling over price when they know they have you, and tomorrow morning the prices are all going back up. Maybe just get it done. Maybe just put the money on the table, or maybe don't put yourself in that position. Maybe get it done earlier in the window. Maybe approach a Josh Brownhill who was very excited about the Leeds United project and is now going to Al Sabab. So, and again, I know, and that's expectation management as well. That's bringing the expectation level down from a Paijao Bakwa to a Josh Brownhill. Nothing against Josh Brownhill, but the second highest GNA in the championship last season, a leader, a goal scorer, guy who can take a set piece, and he's there for nothing. Gus Hamer down the road, a player who can play in 2 positions through the middle, will give you what Joe Rothwell last year gave us, that burst of pace forward into space when there's a gap to run into, which right now we still have that side-to-side kind of motion. But that person, and then if you look against Newcastle, how many opportunities were there to strike the ball from the edge of the box? That's it. And, Gus Hamer comes into that bracket. He's just down the M1. You could have got that done pretty quickly if you hadn't waited.
But I guess as well, then this is where, and I've mentioned this a few times as well, this is where you do look at Farke. Let's say if Okafor's not getting the minutes on that left-hand side and he's fit, raring to go, ready, but maybe it potentially is the off-the-ball work. Maybe it's something like that he's not keen on. That's me being purely speculatory. I'm just making that up. But let's say if he favours Harrison, it's because of his off-the-ball work, and it's it's the first time he's worked with Jack Harrison in a prolonged period. So I'm kind of hoping he doesn't go to that, and we kind of, I guess the strongest side right now, Jer, is the obvious, and then on the back of that you've got, going forward, Okafor potentially on the left, you've got DCL up top and Nonto on the right. I guess if you are playing a 3 up top, that I guess is kind of what it has to be. And maybe Gabby Goodmanson on set pieces, because he put in a couple of really decent ones in pre-season. But he did absolutely scraping at the barrel there, but it is what it is.
Well, it's a very Everton front line, isn't it? DCL, Jack Harrison, and they wanted to buy Willie Nanto. So there's 3 players that, if things had gone differently 2 years ago, would have all played for Everton, who were stinking up the Premier League for the last 4 years. So that tells you where you are. That tells you the level of where they were, and you have their front 3. Now it's a different team and a different setup and a different style, and it's not Sean Dyche garbage ball. Like, at least there's some attempt to play football. So maybe it's different. And Willie Nanto wants to prove that he's a Premier League level player. I mean, he threw his ties out of pram 2 years ago, went on strike to be a Premier League player. So now he has to back himself and show that he is a Premier player and prove it, which is great, because it means he's got the bit between his teeth and a point to prove. And so far, he's been really decent this year for us on the left-hand side. The cutting inside and shooting isn't working for him right now. Again, I'd like to see him put onto the right-hand side to give us a different option. Maybe Farke will look at that. I don't think he will. I think he'll persevere with Aronson and James on the right and just try and push through this. But at some point, there will be a moment, as there has been over a couple of years with Daniel Farke, where he's going to have to make a change and move away from what he is stuck with. Because every season has been, well, Piro's a 10 and Georgina Rutter's a 9, but not Daniel. No, he is. Definitely is. Do you know what? He's not. Swap him. So like every season he's had that moment where it's like, well, play this guy, play this guy, play this guy, play this guy. No, he's not in the plans, not in the plans. Okay, actually, do you know what? In he goes. So he Melier being dropped as the prime example. He's fine. Okay, I'm dropping him. So there is that moment where it can be a bit stubborn and he'll stick with things, but then there is that moment where he'll go, yeah, I can't anymore. I have to make the change. And you hope he sees that earlier. I think Dan James will find his form. I don't know about Brendan Aronson, but I think Dan James will find form eventually. I think the 4-3-3 has been a difference for him. He's more inside than hugging the touchline. I think he's better hugging the touchline. He's not getting the space to run into it that he was in the 4-2-3-1 because he's further on. So there's bits to this, but I think at some point it's now purely down to the manager to take what he's got and sculpt a side that can survive in the Premier League. And again, it was unnecessary to get to that stage.
And some people will say, look, this is if he's able to keep us up right now with this squad, that is almost the glossing bit of his career right now, as so far, with the squad that we've got, the challenge that it is at Premier League level now to stay up. And he's done it with a lack of investment in the final third now. But there's a so that should be an opportunity for Daniel Farke, shouldn't it? It should be, galvanize the group. Let's see what I can do. Can I be even more pragmatic, maybe change to a different formation in game? Can I vary things up? Can be unpredictable, I think, is the key message for Daniel Farke, because I think sometimes at Leeds it is quite predictable. That's what would be nice to see. So should we put Jayden Bogle wide right? That seems to be working.
Was it you that said that, or somebody else that said Jayden Bogle was probably our best right winger at this point in time?
Is at the minute, isn't he? He's just brilliant at getting forward. So
do you go to a 3 at the back? Do you? But I think it's probably the wrong time of the season to be changing systems. But I think you'll see some subtle changes to this. And also, to be fair, and give Daniel Farke his flowers on this, Leicester City kept 3 clean sheets in an entire season last year. Ipswich kept 2 clean sheets in an entire season last year. Leeds have got 2 clean sheets in their first 3 games. So he has done something right at the start of the season. So, and Arsenal being an outlier, the performance against Everton was really, really good. Performance against Newcastle was really, really good. So defend, and you have to look at this from a defensive performance now, because we're not the big dog. We have to just defend. So they're very good defensive performances as well. But he's got players in there that can do it. Like, I mean, Ilya Groove's not everyone's favorite player, but for me, from a defensive perspective, he's an out-and-out defender. For me, as a defensive midfielder, his job is to kick people and make tackles. And in certain games this year, that's what's going to be needed. Your Anton Stack adds a bit more to that as well. If you can get Ampadu and Tanaka back, that gives you a bit more chance there as well, a chance to move things around a little bit. Maybe frees up some money in January then again as well, if there is interest in players. So, yeah, I mean, it's over to the manager now to try and do what he can with this, but he hasn't had all the ingredients to make the cake he wanted to. He's probably got a bit of a soggy bottom right now.
Yeah, if we can get to January just in fighting chance and then invest heavily, or invest in a decent level. Look, PSR will be a conversation there as well, of course. Lap, as I said, just to maybe finalize the stream, Joe. Right now, do you guys believe this team will keep us up? I guess the context is there, Lap, is that I think we will do something in January. I think they have to do something in January right now. But I guess if we're just having a bit of a fun game and we don't do anything in January, Joe, think we stay up with this side?
I would have thought, had we finished the window.
I guess as well, to add to that, you look at, and we were speaking about this yesterday on the second channel, you look at Wolves investing in, Tolu, Rockader. You look at, West Ham bringing in Matías Fernandes, who had a really good game at the end of the season. Forest have got Somerville back now as well, haven't they? For the first time since like January, February, who looked absolutely lightning against Forest. And then you can look at the other teams in and around them as well. Brentford have brought in another winger, I think, on the last day as well, and obviously Atara. So I guess the other part to this is these teams have strengthened as well on the last day, which I guess sticks that knife in a little bit more.
Yeah, it does, but there's no guarantee they're all going to be hits. I don't think Wolves have done good business this summer at all. I think they've lost a lot of experience and a lot of good players.
It's been the worst.
Yeah, they've been really, really poor. I mean, if you look at the net spends for most of them, I think we're 11th in net spend across the window. So we haven't spent the least amount of money. We haven't spent the most amount of money. Do you remember the old Reebok advert where there was 2 guys in a jungle, and there's a lion that spots these 2 guys?
Yeah.
The guy puts his foot on a rock and starts tying his Reeboks. Yeah. And your man turns around and says to him, "You're not going to outrun him." And he just looks at him and says, "I don't need to. I just need to outrun you." And he takes off running. And I think Leeds' window now comes down to that. It's like, we don't need to outrun and beat everybody. We just need to outrun 3. That's it. That's all we need to be able to do. Are there 3 worse teams squad-wise in the division. I think there probably is. Can Daniel Farke do better business? I think he probably can. He's got a more balanced squad. He knows the players well. There's more settled behind the scenes than a new manager coming in. And I think some of those teams will pull the plug on a manager pretty quickly. I think by October, somebody will have lost their job. By the time we get to the next international break, I think somebody will have lost their job. So at that point, all Farke needs to do is outlast those people and just stay slightly above them, you know. And right now, we're sitting right bang in the middle of the table. We've got Wolves and Fulham coming out. If we put performances in against both of them that we put in against Newcastle, we could nick something in those games and get points.
Wolves is massive, isn't it, Joe? Massive.
Of course it is. Those two games are huge now because they're not Arsenal, they're not Newcastle. So now there's an expectation. Well, you have to get something from them. A point against Newcastle was a great result. 3 points against Everton, great result. But you need to get something against both of those, and there needs to be a 3-point in there somewhere.
Yeah, good point to end it. That is Jer Lynch, everybody, and I'm sure you're all very, very aware of who he is. His link will be in the description below. Make sure you check Jer out and his fantastic content. Jer, what have you got coming out today, mate? Anything nice?
News video coming out later on today. I'm still putting the bits and pieces today, the finer detail on Derek OJB and the fallout from internally from a piece from Baron Cross today as well. And then I'll have some more bits and pieces dug up. And we've a podcast from last night with Paul and Jerry where we kind of try to take the heat out of the situation a little bit and trying to analyze the entire window as a whole, which was kind of successful at points and kind of not at other points, but it was an attempt to do it. So that's there as well. People want to catch that as well. Thanks.
I think Paul will be in the chat, but it was quite funny seeing him have the meltdown at the back end of the window. That was great to see because that doesn't normally happen. So yeah, I'll be tuning into that.
It's pretty calm.
Right, everybody, you know what to do. Slap a like on the video. Check out all the other content. We'll be doing something on the second channel today as well. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we'll see you in a bit. Cheers.